Hello and welcome to episode 185 of RuggaMatrix International. I'm your host, Euro Sen. Today we cross to Les Kiss in Dublin as he talks about Ireland's success in the early stages of Six Nations. We also talk Super Rugby, Benji Marshall and Michael Cheika ahead of the 2014 season. That's all ahead on RuggaMatrix 185. As always, RuggaMatrix is brought to you by Strike, Australia's leading provider of Bluetooth car kits and other handheld devices. Make sure you get your cradle today. If you get caught, it could cost you big time. Strike.com.au will give you 10% off if you enter the code RuggaMatrix on checkout. So make sure you look after your driving today. Check out strike.com.au. RuggaMatrix also brought to you by mybean.com.au. Coffee direct from the roaster to you, and they sell at roasters' prices. Hello and welcome to episode 185 of RuggaMatrix International. I'm your host, Euro Sen. It's a muggy morning here in Sydney, 7 a.m. as we record this show on a Wednesday. My co-host is Mark Cashman. Thanks for coming across so early, mate.
Always a pleasure, Bronk, to be in the studio, and 185. It's got a nice ring to it, eh?
Certainly, and I'll tell you what's got a nice ring to it. The way Ireland are performing. We'll have a Super Rugby preview. Today is the same day as the launch of the Super Rugby season in the south, but it's Six Nations in the north. And it's all happening with our good friend over our shoulder. Look at him looking resplendent. Very tight outfit there. Got the cap on as well. Look at the spectacles. Les Kiss. Welcome to the show.
G'day guys, how are you? Good to talk to you. Cash, haven't spoken for a while. We've had flurries of snowstorms here over the afternoon, so chalk and cheese in the weather there, guys.
Snowstorms. All right, Les. You had a wonderful win at the weekend, and you know, Twitter went into meltdown about it. There's also a bit of social media about a One Direction band member and Mike Phillips too, so we'll get into that as well. But Les, I think the big question is, you are one of the best defences coaches I've ever seen, but you must have been really impressed with the last two matches and the way the guys have really knuckled down and been able to basically give you a sheet that you're so proud of.
Yeah, well, you've got to be happy when there's no try scored against you, 2 games into a competition. But, yeah, their approaches and my approaches and the management's approaches that nothing's been achieved other than winning 2 test matches. We've positioned ourselves pretty well within in terms of the competition. However, there's still a lot to do, and both games were at home. We wanted to start well and put a stamp on Aviva Stadium, but we know that there's some big challenges ahead. England first and foremost in Twickenham in about 10 days' time. So very happy with how they have gone in defence. You know, it's been just a shift of focus. We've tried to I've tried to introduce a few new tactical changes and differences in our defensive system and how we go about things, and things are starting to come through in a real fruitful way, but still a lot of work to do. And as I said, England, then we have Italy, and then France, who we do have over in France as well. So 2 big away games if we're going to take the competition, but starting with England, obviously.
There's a lot of talk around the place about what Joe Schmidt has actually brought to this sort of group of players. They look invigorated. You're getting a lot more out of Brian O'Driscoll, particularly in that game against Wales. We spoke about this a bit earlier off air, and also Paul O'Connell. All your big dogs are producing.
Well, yeah, it's great to have the big dogs together. That's for sure. I think it's been a long time since we've had Brian and Paul playing regularly together, and it does make a difference. But I would venture to say that one of the things that has happened over the last 12 or 18 months, and in particular the last 6 months, there's been a real progress made in terms of the next layer of player coming through with their experience. We don't have to sit back and just rely on one of those guys or both of those guys. There's guys who are stepping up to the plate and certainly putting their hand up in terms of leadership roles, etc. This week, against Scotland, Paul O'Connell had to pull out on the morning of the game because of a chest infection hit him overnight, and he had to be withdrawn from the match. And we started with Dan Toohey. Now, Dan Toohey played a really solid game. He was very good. He's had a good year thus far. And he obviously went back to the bench when we when we played Wales, and Devon Toner and Paul O'Connell started against Wales. Now, Paul wasn't feeling well at 55 minutes. The chest infection was taking its toll. But he had to put up his hand to come off. It was his call. And, you did feel quite comfortable that Devon Toner's doing a fantastic job. He called lineouts in the US and Canada tour just recently, so he's been learning a lot off Paul. We had Dan Tui come off the bench. We knew that he could do a good job for us from what he did the previous week. Unfortunately, he fractured his arm within the first 3 or 4 minutes. We had to pull him from the pitch. But it's good to know that you can take your big guns off at certain parts of the game and know that you have got cover.
Les, speaking of cover, one of the best things about your coaching is, and it's always been a mantra of yours, and I assume it's still going there, mate, is that if you bleed a little bit in defence, it shouldn't be fatal. And certainly I saw some situations where Wales attacked you out wide, but you never thought they were going to penetrate you because you just pushed them out into touch. Took out one of the Steadicam operators, actually, so I don't know if you have to pay for that, Les, but, and it just showed, they're really comfortable, they're working well. Have you been able to even tweak your defence even better now under Joe Schmidt?
Well, what we've probably tried to do in this recent period, we've had 1, 2, 3, 5 games together now, is definitely approach the game in a different way. The game of rugby can't be played many different ways, but there are certain tactical and strategic elements that you can actually try to introduce into your team, and it doesn't just hold in one area of the game. It's not just in attack, defence, set piece, kicking, restarts, all of them play a part, and we're just trying to probably meld those elements together and to come up with variable ways that we can approach a tactical approach for certain teams. So from a defensive perspective, it's we've tried a few things out. We've had a bit of traction in the last few games. Things have come along nicely for us, but one of the key factors, and as you said, Bronk, this isn't a perfect game. You will never be perfect. You will never not miss a tackle. You will never have a situation where the opposition do get an advantage. And one of the true qualities of any team in defence is how they fight their way out of that adversity of that moment and are able to heal the wounds that do come from being cut a few times in your defence and get back and recover those situations. And our guys seem to be in a real strong place in that respect at this moment. So it's a very healthy thing to have in a rugby team, and Joe's influence has been very positive and encouraging in terms of building a more complete strategic approach. And I think most parts of a game are pretty healthy. John Plumtree's certainly put his stamp on the line out and particularly the driving game. Part of our approach that we wanted to do is to become a better mauling team, because defences are getting tougher, and the game is certainly being pushed to be sped up and make it more of an attacking spectacle. And you've got to try and find an edge in other parts of the game, and the driving maul is one way that you can pull defences in and create opportunities. So John's done a good job in that area as well. So we're trying to pull a lot of pieces together and become a more complete, potent team across the board.
Just Casho, before you jump in, just on the same train of thought, I wanted to continue with that. There was an intercept too, and the reaction by your players was very quick at the time and shut it down. I mean, that's what we're talking about, reaction and getting on with the job in defence in a dynamic situation, and you were able to save that. That could have been diabolical for you, but in the end, you managed to shut it down, Les.
Yeah, that was reasonably early in the game. We had a set-piece play and a starter play, and they threw everything at us in terms of their blitz defence, and it caused a little bit of concern at the time, because Drico was hit in the solar plexus. It totally winded him as he threw his pass, and it was intercepted by George North. But I think the reaction and the commitment and not just to throw the hands in the air and just get on with the job was quite apparent then, because Rob Carney just reshaped his movement in the air and made a crucial tackle on George North, and that's a huge man running, and Rob had
not an easy. If anyone's going to get it, you don't want George North to get it.
No, exactly right. And And I thought Carnes was brilliant. Rob's been in really good form. He's imperious in the air. And I think when you know Carnes is in a really strong place in his game when his defence is strong and he's making those types of decisions and critical defensive plays at the back. And those are really pleasing things from a defensive perspective, without a doubt. We're under no illusions. There are some more challenges ahead. I've just finished a massive preview vision for England and a look at our previous two games, and England will hurt us in a couple of areas if we don't get our heads switched on in terms of some defensive approaches that we're looking at. So as good as it has been, we still have a lot to do.
And Les, rugby's always a game of opportunity, and a couple of guys there that come to mind to me for Ireland who've done very well. Andrew Trimble's come in this year after not seeing action for your side for a couple of years, and then there's the guys in your back row, Omani, and also Chris Henry, who scored a nice try at the start of that game against Wales on the weekend. And you've got some real depth now in that you sort of spoke about earlier. But those guys have done exceedingly well.
Yeah, there has been some pleasing aspects of guys who've stepped up to the plate, as I've said earlier. We've tried to have a real focus on the subs that come onto the park and can really deliver and up the ante and add real value. I think we've seen that in the last couple of games, and I think also against New Zealand before Christmas. You mentioned Trimble. Trimble has been around for a while, but he's been in good form, and I must say he had a good game in the weekend, without a doubt. It's an area where Luke Fitzgerald has been carrying an injury. I think he's back on deck very shortly. Tommy Bowe, who's out injured at the moment. We've had Keith Earls out injured. Simon Zebo's just come back into some rugby. We'd like to see him get some more rugby under his belt. Craig Gilroy, he's been playing okay. So we've got a lot of numbers that can play there. So, for a player to pull the jersey on and get an opportunity and make it hard for us to make another decision and put someone in front of them, Andrew's certainly doing that. And I think young Dave Carney is also doing the same on the other wing. He had a real good game. He was very slippery. They couldn't quite get hold of him. His footwork was great. He was good in the air. Defence was very, very good. So we've got two wingers who are really putting their hand up despite the injuries that we have got in that area. And the other guy we had on the bench is Burgess McFadden, who's just coming back from a fractured hand as well. So we have some good depth there. And if you don't perform, we can make changes. But those two guys did well last time, and certainly make it hard to make a decision otherwise around that.
There's been much talk about, and we're talking about the performance of Wales on the weekend. There's been much talk over in the UK about the curse of the British and Irish Lions tour. They, at times, I know you guys made them look very flat, but at times I think they were flat. And like even some guys from within that Lions camp, I noticed on social media over the past couple of days, have called for major changes to that Wales side. Much talk there, Les, about this alleged curse of the British and Irish Lions tour?
Yeah, look, well, it certainly does have an accumulative effect in some form and different ways, whether it's you carry an injury through that period, you don't get a good, even though it's a shortened pre-season into the next year, you do compromise a lot when you do play the Lions year, because it's a very long year. And what you probably saw from the Welsh team as well, Gethin Jenkins, I think, had an injury around Christmas, so he only had one game back, or it might have been his first game back. Sam Warburton hadn't played many games recently. Roberts had only had one game before he played. I think Lydiot hasn't played a lot over in Racing. So they've had a lot of guys who probably wouldn't be as match fit because of different reasons. But so the toll does come up when in certain injuries and the way that people do feel after a long year. So I don't think we're actually talking about it as a curse. I think it's a reality. The way we're approaching it is to try and manage our players as well as possible throughout the season, having a central contracting system as we do have here. There is a way that we can monitor that better and influence the amount of time that players do play, and hopefully manage it so that they are in tip-top condition to perform not only for Ireland but also for their provinces in their critical games.
Couple of questions from social media, Les. The first one from the gorgeous Catherine Murphy, who you obviously know very well. And she said on Facebook, she asked the question about what was the reaction like with Mike Phillips and what are the, now I can't remember his name, is it Niall? What are the One Direction boys? Sorry to our island viewers and listeners, but they had got into a bit of a Twitter spat after Rob Kearney and Phillips and a few of the boys got roughed up in the in-goal area there, and it was quite comical in the end. And I think young Niall said that he rubbished Phillips, and then Phillips responded by saying, "Well, get down to training and let's see how much of a man you are." And then Rob Kearney went on Twitter and said, "Don't worry, mate, I've got your back."
It puts another image on that. Just handbags flying in the ether. You know what I mean? It's but it was just an unfortunate, a challenge on Paddy Jackson. He scored a try, and one of our guys weren't happy with it. But Phillips runs from 20 yards away and gets involved, and there was nothing major in it really. But it wasn't nice what was done to Paddy, but. You'd think that Mike, would have more experience than to run in like that, and I think he may have been frustrated throughout the game, and he wasn't quite getting the opportunities that he usually does because the forward pack weren't making yards for him. So it just came out in that game, and he also was in the referee's ear most of the game, and I think the ref just had enough in the end and said, "Here, have a rest, boy," but it's only a couple of minutes anyway. But yeah, it's interesting. It has been in the news here. The One Direction boy Niall. And his little spat with Phillips, and people like to have the story, and it's certainly been on the wires here, that's for sure.
Come on, Wales, you can pick on bigger blokes than that, surely. It's not that bad. So I'd like to see the One Direction 15. What that would be like. So.
Yeah, I wonder if you'd say the same to Meatloaf or something like that.
Yeah. Well, take on AC/DC, different story there. Good Aussie band, mate. You know him well, Kissy.
Well, actually, boys, the captain of the One Direction first 15 would be James O'Connor, of course.
Oh yeah, James O'Connor. Yes. Justin Bieber. Another question from Paddy Logan. So he's got to be from Ireland. I guess you answered this before, Les, a little bit, but he wanted to say, congrats on a fantastic start to Six Nations. What changes did you make since last summer to improve the D so dramatically? Or are we just looking at personnel changes? How do you answer that, Kissy?
Well, I think the game generally is moving in a direction where we want to give a product or create a product that is faster and quicker. So I think the discussions that we're having with Joel Juch, who is the referees administrator up here in the Northern Hemisphere, is about creating a quicker game. I know the referees in the Southern Hemisphere are very big on that and trying to create a dynamic game that can move quickly and be a better spectacle, but not at the expense of some of the traditional qualities of the game. True contesting of the ball at the ruck, etc. The maul, the scrum, the line out, all those things should be preserved as much as possible. But the game is moving in that direction, and I think the referees are going to be harder and tougher on people who do try to spoil the game illegally. And we've just tried to have a real focus from our own perspective to try and be in front of that curve and create better technique and better tactics around the breakdown area so that we're staying out of the ref's ear. But in doing that, you're creating a more, I think, potent mix in terms of how you can attack teams with your defence rather than just stand in a line and maybe hold them back. Where we're just trying to build strategies around being a more using defence as a force more than just something that holds the opposition at bay for a while, and trying to tap into other areas of the game that take pressure off, for example, the maul, a good kick chase game, and trying to vary those things up in a fashion that allows you to be able to serve the rest of your game well, because defence, it's one of the challenging parts of the game as the game gets quicker and quicker, is it's going to take a very smart team to hold the opposition at bay over a period of games to win a competition, and we recognise that. So we're just trying to build a smarter mix in our defence, and hopefully that can help the rest of our game and give us the opportunity to apply pressure with the ball at hand and other parts of our game.
And one last one from the internet. Simon Cross, this is from across the water, from England, so it's not going to be a nice one, Kissy. But I think they're a bit worried about this game coming up at Twickenham. So Simon Crossy, your old mate Casho. A couple of questions here, and I'll let you deal with them the way you feel fit. Do you think the IRFU get an unfair advantage with Irish teams automatically qualifying for the Heineken Cup? He believes so. And he has a problem with Ireland and Leinster and Munster consistently being offside at the breakdown. Do they coach that? I actually went back to him and said, well, maybe you should ask the referees that.
Yeah, well, interesting question. Look, I think one of the real challenges for the game at the moment here in Europe is the process that's slowly coming along in terms of trying to sort out the European or pan-European competitions and get it to a situation that we have a really strong, not only the domestic competitions but also a Heineken Cup in whatever format it comes out in. I think it's been well documented that there's willingness on all sides at this stage to probably, adjust the qualification process, and hopefully that gives a little bit more balance and you earn your way in a lot in a more productive way or in a way that's more fair. So I think some of those things are being addressed, and hopefully we do see some results over the next month or so that people come together and sort that situation out, and then we do have a Heineken Cup of some sorts running next year, and I'm pretty sure if it does happen, there will be changes in how teams do qualify into that. Whatever's existed in the past has existed, so I don't think you can point the finger at Leinster or Munster or any of the Irish teams or Welsh teams that may have a run in. That's just the way it's been administered and how it was put together last time. That's what happens with change and progress. So we may see a different process going forward. And the other question, it's not something we coach, that's for sure. I think in any given game, you could probably find that every team would be offside at some stage around the ruck. I think also if you do have a bias, if I'm watching England, for example, in the vision that I've been pouring through over the last 2 weeks in terms of our upcoming game against them, if I see something that's even marginal, I'm going to call it offside and start to highlight these things. Hopefully bring these things up with the referee, etc. But so I think I could understand where your man's coming from. He looks at it and would only see the things that he would like to see to validate how he perceives Munster and Leinster, because they don't coach to be offside. We coach to try and be onside as much as possible. As I mentioned earlier, one of the real drives we've done is to try and be a team that is very accurate, that technically good, and that we do stay out of the referees' eye. We want to be on the good side of that, and we're trying to develop a more complete player that recognises when they are crossing the line of law and how they do stay on the right side of the law. And I think if you can keep penalties to 10 or under in a game, you're in a really good position, because it's a tough world when you're suddenly giving up 6, 9, 12 points because you're giving too many penalties away. And I think, I didn't mention it on the week, one of the areas they did feel they failed in was the penalties they did give away, and it's one of the things that we're focusing on to make sure that we are perceived as a good, accurate team, and I think we're succeeding in that area.
Yeah, Liz, you're accurate and you're passionate. First 2 weeks of this Six Nations, I think that's one of your mantras. But one of the glue behind a lot of these performances is your number 10, Jonathan Sexton. He's playing very well. Was there fears that, and I know this is a criticism of a lot of the French clubs, is that their S&C, their strength and conditioning programs, and also their physio backup isn't as good as you probably get over your side of the English channel there. What sort of shape's he in? He seems to be in a good state of mind and playing well. Jonathan Sexton, I'm talking about here. Yeah, Johnny is a very different looking player and person in the I don't know
ins and outs of how they run their program at Racing or any of the other French clubs. But I do know that our systems and in our clubs here and the the strength and conditioning, the medical side of things, our player management program that we do have does benefit players. It does provide them an opportunity to be fresh, but getting the right amount of physical preparation as well as being well looked after in terms of any injuries and the medical side of things. So there are some strong things that Irish rugby does offer, and we do think it's one of the things that is very, very favourable for the players. And I think we saw some big decisions from Jamie Heaslip, Sean O'Brien, Paul O'Connell just recently about staying in because they know that there are some good benefits for them. But Johnny did, when he first went across to Racing, he played, I think, in 10 weeks before he played for us, and that would have been probably double to what he would have done in previous times, and it would have just taken its toll because you wouldn't have been used to that for a start, plus lines to it, so there wasn't a off season for him, and he was probably a little bit tired and coming into November, but since then his game time has been managed a little bit more. I think the Racing have another number 10, maybe less injured and maybe getting a bit more time, and Johnny's getting a little bit more rest here and there. But he's certainly come into camp at the beginning of this campaign, and he seemed a lot brighter and a lot healthier, and relishing the opportunity to go into a Six Nation. And you are right, Casho. He's critical. For us. We have a lot of faith in young Katie Jackson and Ian Madigan to fill the breach, but you'd have to say that someone like Sexton is starting to look like a guy that New Zealand have had for a while. When he's involved in their team, Dan Carter, it makes a big difference, and when Johnny Sexton's involved in our team, it provides us with a lot of options. Against Scotland, it was crucial what he did just before half time to open the game up and gave us a bit of impetus to actually move on with that game and get it and take it to where we would like to have taken it earlier. And he's got that in his game on the weekend. Although some of his kicks early in the game weren't as accurate as we would have liked, he still continued to find the space and pressure and turn Wales around and really boss the game. So again, it's nice to have Johnny healthy, that's for sure.
Les, what about Scotland? Now, there's been some pretty interesting commentary in the wake of their loss to England, some criticism of Scott Johnson as well. And I just wanted to ask you your thoughts on speculation. I mean, people are saying, do Scotland deserve to still be in the Six Nations? Obviously, you're first-hand, you can speak about playing against them. Your thoughts of the reaction to Scotland's efforts in Six Nations so far?
Well, I hadn't heard that. I must say, we always catch up with the coaches of the opposition team, or most times, unless there's something that does get in the way, because you do have dinners afterwards, and you do catch up and chat to them. We had a good chat with Gats and Shawnee Edwards and Robbie Howley from the Wales after this recent game, and. Even had a beer together and had a good chat. So we did the same with Scotty Johnson and Matt Taylor, who's there as the assistant or the defence coach there at Scotland now. And from contact, they were frustrated with their game, but I do think things are the way that they're approaching it. They know where they would like to take it and where they'd like to set it up for when Vern Cotter comes in. So I'm a bit surprised that people are just jumping on this now, because if you look at it last year, I think they had their best finish in the Six Nations for a long time. And 2 games in, if the people are turning already, then that's a bit disappointing. I think you have to give them a little bit. A lot of this was
coming from England, though. There was a pretty scathing article in particular in the Telegraph.
Yeah, well, it sounds bloody stupid to be saying that they shouldn't be in the Six Nations if that's what's been said, because Scotland have been a great team in history. They had some great sides. They may not be nailing it this competition, but last year they showed what they have, and I'm pretty sure anyone who underestimates them it's at their own peril, that's for sure. And but at the moment, if you look at Murrayfield, the pitch itself, it's a real difficult pitch to play on. If they do play Scotland a bit like Ireland, you don't have a lot of numbers. If you play a big team like England or even France or Wales, you're on the back foot because it's a pitch that's heavy. A team with more depth can probably play better in those conditions. And Murrayfield's just shocking at the moment. But
yes.
I believe they have plans to put a better pitch in there and put a Deso pitch in there, which make a huge difference and probably supporting their game or their style of game. They like to play better. I know talking to Warren Gatland on the weekend, he was really impressed with Aviva. The Deso pitch that we have there is in great nick. It's probably the best in Europe at the moment, and in terms of the internationals, and it holds up well. It's a fast pitch. We've had a lot of rain here recently, and before Scotland and Wales, and it didn't affect it at all. It was just a superb pitch to play on.
Kisho, the article in the Telegraph in particular wasn't necessarily about Scotland being in Six Nations. That's been elsewhere. And in particular, it was a pretty fair swipe at Scott Johnson's coaching, and being sort of dismissive about the game. So it was an interesting. I retweeted it the other day.
Well, I think in our game there, Cash, those things have come flying from left, right, and centre all the time. I'm pretty sure Jono's been there before, and he'll handle it well. But look, the game's about opinions, and people will throw them up, and if people are unhappy internally, they'll look at it. But if it's coming from another country, it's quite interesting, I must say.
Les, artificial pitches, we're talking about the quality of the pitches affecting the way the game's played. Is there a solution out there? Is there a groundswell in Europe about playing a bit more on artificial pitches? I know Saracens play on artificial pitches, and I've actually seen a game in New York Athletic versus Boston in October of last year, played on an artificial pitch, and listen, it's not terribly different to actually playing on grass, except the washing the jerseys after the game isn't as horrendous as it normally is.
Oh, just like your jersey, Les.
Yeah. It was really dirty. That's for sure. You guys can vouch for that. I can certainly validate that. The Saracens have a artificial pitch. Cardiff have just put one in. In fact, if Cardiff didn't put one, they probably wouldn't have played many games recently. I know Glasgow wish they had one. They've had to cancel 2 matches up north there. So some form of hybrid pitch or artificial pitches are things that are always coming up in conversations here. Whether they should become, the pitches all should become artificial, I'm not so sure. I like to think I'm a progressive thinker, and I could really accept it, but I'd like to see another development in them to just give them a little bit more reality to them, because a lot of players do say they play fine on it, but there are some differences in the makeup of how you play the game. Even goal kickers, it's a different. Your foot doesn't move at all, so there's variation there. Scrums are different in terms of your traction, etc. And I don't say that in a negative way. I think there are some positives with it, but I do believe Wales are going to be going into a Deso pitch, which is like a hybrid pitch. I'm not sure the technology behind it, but that's what the Aviva has at the moment, and it's holding up exceptionally well and has really matured over the last 2 years, and it's a superb pitch. So maybe some form of hybrid pitch that the technology has developed massively in the last 5 years is the way to go, because overall I think without a doubt all the home nations up here would like to have better pitches and play a more freer, open style of rugby, without a doubt, and we would like that, but it doesn't just stop at the big pitches. As you said, Casho, Saracens have put one in. Will other clubs put it in to actually facilitate that better brand of rugby and a more open game? Maybe it will happen there, and we do see some improvements across the board because of that. But I'm not completely sold on it, but I can see that it will be part of the future. That's for sure.
And Les, while we're talking about innovations, Michael Cheika here in Sydney, the coach of the Waratahs, has an idea that the scrums should be timed on what you'd say would be a shot clock. Like if they're not done and dusted within 45 seconds, it's a short arm sort of penalty. Thoughts about that, and also the old chestnut about bonus points in the Six Nations.
Well, the actual I've always been big on no bonus points in the Six Nations. I just think it just comes down to real Test rugby, and part of it, part of my thoughts around it at the time when I had this was leading into the World Cup of in New Zealand. When it comes down to it, you've got, if you make the semis or the quarterfinals, it becomes knockout. And the more you play knockout, the more you understand it. And it's not about bonus points. And I think in Test rugby, that's what it should be like in the big competitions. So I'm not a complete fan of having bonus points in Six Nations. That's just my personal view. I think if you need a bonus point system to make you an adventurous and ambitious team that wants to coach in a tactical way or in a technical way that can create opportunities, and you need a bonus point system to do that, then I think it's pretty sad. I think if you've got that ambition, you can adapt your game under harsh conditions and keep it tight, or you can try and open a game up through a different tactical approach. That's the way I'd look at it. And the first part of your question on time clock on a scrum there, Casho, the only probably problem I'd find with that is if there's a shot clock, it comes down to perception of the referee, who's holding it up the most and who's not doing it. So then it still becomes a guess-off on what the referee's going to give, who's going to get the short arm penalty, or if it's a free kick or if it's a penalty. But I do think it's something that's worth chatting further about and trying to find some solutions, because it certainly is still a little bit of a bugbear at times, that's for sure.
Les, we're going to wrap it up now because we need to let you get on with the job, and we have to get on with the rest of the day here in Australia. But I just want to reiterate just how valuable Les's time is, and having worked in the back room before, and during a campaign like this is very valuable time to grab Les for so long during a Six Nations campaign. And you just heard him talk about how important it is that, it's not about the bonus points, it's about the attrition of Test rugby. But Les, a quick word or two about England. This is a game that I think all Irishmen and Irish women and Irish kids and even One Direction members look forward to. I don't know who's going to pick on there, and in the England, don't pick on Tuolangi because it could end badly. But I think this is a game we can't wait to see, and we see it here in Australian Satanta Sports. But Les, you've been going over the tapes for weeks. What do you think? They'll be buoyed with their win against Scotland, and they had a bit of a pep in their step afterwards, and they believe they can do much better.
Well, look, under the conditions that Murrayfield was in, you couldn't hope for much more. They probably were a little bit disappointed they didn't get another try, something late in the game. They had a bit of dominance of field position and that, but it was difficult conditions. It's a pitch that doesn't lend itself to a running game. They probably did everything they could, and particularly from the 35th minute onwards in the France game, to take that game. But as the French can and will do, they can do some unbelievable things at times, and they got that win against England. So England, 2 away games, just lost a game and won a game 20-0. They would be probably feeling fairly confident about what they can deliver for the rest of competition, because I think they get at least 2 more home games, if not 3, and if that's the case, then they're in a strong position because of that. The impressive thing about England is their forward pack has been improving year in, year out over the last 2 years. You saw what they did with the All Blacks a couple of years ago. Even last year, they pushed them all the way. They got a result against Australia, although I thought Australia were robbed in that game with a couple of decisions there. But they're a team that's really on the up, and they've got some real quality players. Vunipola at number 8 is just a damaging runner, very hard to contain. They've got a scrum that's operating pretty well at the moment, although we're pretty happy with ours, I must say. Farrell, who can kick goals from everywhere. Big centre, and Burrell, who's come in from Northampton, who's showing his wear. Mike Brown at fullback has been a sublime form. They're a dangerous package, and at home they are difficult to beat. I think I don't think we've beaten them since 2010 when Tommy Bowe scored a sensational try that day. So we're we're very, very aware of the challenge ahead of us, that's for sure. And the more you look over the video, you know it's going to be a huge battle. So both teams know that it's a real defining game in terms of one thing. First is a test match against those two teams. You want to win those test matches. Two, we've got a triple crown that we can play for. If they win it, they're still in the hunt for a triple crown. And then the result really shapes the competition and changes the back end of the competition. The last weekend, if they win, then everyone's in the hunt still. If we win, maybe it's just us and France in the hunt. So it really does shape the competition. So it's a huge weekend for Six Nations rugby, that's for sure.
And Les, listen, I'm sure that the key to the match, and you mentioned this off air before, is stopping the go forward they get out of Vunipola, that big number 8 who you sort of mentioned there. He needs to come to a full stop, really, doesn't he, in that game? Otherwise, you're going to be playing catch up and scrambling a bit out wide. And England do have some weapons out wide. Mike Brown, I like the way he's playing.
Yeah, look, they've got speed out there. They've brought Tommy May in. He's playing very well. They've got young Noel from Exeter Chiefs. He didn't have the best of starts against France, but he worked his way into the game. He had a better game in the weekend. I think he's an exciting young player that's coming through the ranks there. So they've experimented a bit on the wings and getting some payback. I think their back row as a whole has been fantastic. Rob Shaw he's just as honest as the day is long, and he's become a really good leader. Vunipola is also supported well by Tom Wood, who's is very athletic, and he also gives them a lot of options right throughout their set piece work. So and if they're going well, you know that Danny Kerr can be a real danger at the base of a scrum or a base of a ruck. So it really, you've got to keep your guard up across the park on them. And if we're happy where we've got to so far, but we know that this is massive. This game, there's a lot of expectation about it, particularly locally here for our team. It's about managing that and being able to put it in its right context, because ultimately it's. Nothing has been achieved next week. All we did was achieve a win last week and the week before, and we've got to make sure we prep the way we have in the past couple of games, and make sure that our prep does it justice. Because if we can get into the right part of the game, we're certainly a good chance. But you'd fancy that England do fancy themselves at home at Twickenham, as they have. They're hard to beat. They're just hard to beat.
Yeah, they certainly are. Les, a quick one before you go. Sam Burgess, likely to sign with England Rugby, probably through Bath. He's an amazing athlete, isn't it? Casho and I saw Benji Marshall play against the Waratahs in a trial the other day at 10. Still a little bit lost at this point, trying to get that league stuff out of him. But, I mean, you've got to say, he'd be a great signing for England.
Oh, absolutely. If they nail that one, I think there'll be some pluses. I think there's enough time for him to integrate into the nuances of rugby to be part of a squad going forward. Without a doubt, Bath are a team that have got a massive amount of resources behind them at the moment, and they're certainly placed themselves in the ladder where they'll be in contention at the end of the year. So it's a team that's that if Sam Burgess does go to, he's with a good solid team, so it does help a player if he's playing in a good team to develop his game. So I think overall, if they get him going, it will get him across there and he comes into the fold. It certainly makes him even more potent. But it does take time, as you saw with Benji Marshall, I think. But I think he has the qualities to do it and succeed. That's for sure. Benji, I heard it wasn't the ideal start for him, but I certainly wouldn't be writing him off. We know how good he is, and whether or not he comes into play for any greater honours there, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure Sam Burgess got his teeth in the game and got it right. I think he will. He'll become part of an England squad for the World Cup, that's for sure.
12 or 6, Les?
Interesting question, actually. You probably, they've got Billy Twelvetrees playing at 12 there at the moment. They'd like to have a bit of a ball player at second receiver, England. I think he could do either. I think possibly 12 would be the easier one in the shorter time frame because of the all the line out and the set piece work that you have to get through in terms of knowledge base and technical base that you have to learn there, it might be just a bit too short of a time period for them. But so I'd probably imagine it might be in the backs there, mate.
All right, Les, mate, really appreciate your time tonight. Congratulations on your start at Six Nations. Long way to go, and I know you're pretty good at keeping a lid on it. And you're getting the best out of Brian O'Driscoll still. It's amazing. That bloke will play until he's as old as you. And I think it's wonderful. I just love seeing Ireland do so well. It's obviously getting under the skin of the English, so this should make a great game at Twickenham. Kissy, you're looking wonderful over the shoulder there, mate. And there's still some bits and pieces coming out of the side of the hat. I don't know what they are.
They've certainly turned a bit greyer, that's for sure. But anyway, guys, thanks for that. I appreciate the time. We head off tomorrow. We're into a camp at Clonmel, and the guys are getting together to start the formative part of our strategy for England, and also review the last game in a bit more depth. So it's all still happening here, and hopefully can continue, but still a lot of work to be done. So and good luck to all the teams. I think the Super 15 starts this week, doesn't it? So looking forward to seeing how that all goes as well.
Oh, terrific. All right, there he is, Les Kiss. Just stay there for a moment, Les, Casho. Let's go straight to the trial game from last weekend we talked about. It is the launch of the Super Rugby competition this week. Very soon it will get underway. But we talked about Benji Marshall. First we're going to hear from him, then Michael Cheika after the trial game. But first up, here's Mark Cashman on the sideline with Benji Marshall.
Mate, every day's a challenge at training, Definitely because I'm new, there's still a lot to learn. Probably trying to put away all the habits that I learned in rugby league over sort of a long time. It's sort of hard sometimes to forget those habits that you're used to doing every day. So that's probably been the biggest thing is having a clear mind to learning new things. And I feel like if I keep learning every game, then that's all it's about.
For instance, what's a habit you've had to get rid of?
Oh mate, there's plenty. Sort of like the way we pass in league, going into the line and trying to put people through holes. Sometimes you got to be able to pass and then clean rucks out, not fade out the back, and that's a big habit that I've had. But probably and running and catching the ball instead of standing still to deliver, that sort of stuff. But mate, I've still got a lot to learn. I said that last week. The expectation's been massive, but you just got to embrace the expectation and just try and get better. And it's second game in 14 years, so can still keep building.
And the alignment's also something you need to get your head around a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, different. I suppose when the line speed's coming a bit quicker, probably get a little bit deeper. I think I played a little bit too flat today at times, so still another learning curve, but mate, that's, as long as I can keep learning and keep getting better, that's what it's about.
What are your thoughts about the Waratah performance tonight?
Yeah, solid. I think, just speaking to Cheika then, they cleaned up their rucks from last week, and he reckons they were a lot better, so they dominated us in that area in the first 40, and something probably we need to work on too.
Bit of love from you across the Tasman early in the week about Izzy, and he didn't disappoint, did he? Oh
mate, he's just one of those athletes. I think he could be good at any sport. You look at him, he's one of the biggest human beings on the planet. So no one really wants, everyone here wants to see him in full flight, and he showed again tonight, his skills.
Is he someone you'd look to for, say, advice on making the transition?
Yeah, mate, I was just talking to him then about a few things, and had some good advice about he thinks I should play fullback, but but I'm enjoying the challenge at 10. I like sort of directing the team around, and I think just from this week to last week, my sort of direction was a bit better, and I felt not as lost today. So if I can get it better again next week, hopefully I can just keep getting better. I mean, there's no guarantees I'm going to be in the team round one, but this is the time to learn.
This early stage of development, do you think 15 might have been a wiser move this stage?
No, not really. I trust the coaches and whatever they say, and I feel like, I want to have a challenge at 10, and I feel like what I've learned has been quite a rapid development. Considering I was given no chance. I've still got a lot to learn, but I'm happy with where I'm building it.
Michael, pretty good hit out tonight.
Yeah, definitely an improvement from last week's, which is the idea, I suppose, of the trials. A bit better every week, and we were able to put a few new combinations together, get everyone a bit of a run. So all in all, it was a good night.
You must have been impressed with your breakdown work and also your defence.
Yeah, I was saying before, our breakdown work couldn't have got any worse than last week, so it was a good wake-up call for us to then work on some body height issues, and you can never beat that. It's old school, so we got on top of that, and we weren't 100% consistent with it tonight, but we delivered it on enough occasions to give us the opportunity to score the 5 tries.
Is the team becoming on the same page as you? I know you've spoken about this before.
Yeah, I think the team's clearly got the identity of itself now. It knows how it wants to play the game. What we have to do is be mentally strong to deliver that with the physicality required to compete with the best teams in this competition. But one thing I'd say now is the team has changed, whatever, 15, 16 months on. It's a new team. There's a lot of humility and hard work around the team. We understand how we want to play the game, and that's how we're going to play it regardless. And they understand that, and I'm not saying we're there, that we have to improve our physicality. And if we get that going, along with our running game, then we could be a chance, if we get a bit of luck, to do something.
Pressure's on though when you think about predictions of 1 or 2 that you've said previously.
Oh, I never predicted anything. I'm ambitious to be a 1 or 2, so I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. If our supporters thought I was targeting 5 or 6, then they'd be a little bit disappointed, wouldn't they? And I think that I'm very realistic. I'm not predicting anything. All I'm doing is saying we have clear ambition of where we want to be. If we work hard enough and we train well enough and we're true enough to our identity as a team, then we're a chance to get there. If we don't, there's no way we're going to get there. We know that.
The Beale Foley thing tonight was on show. You're having a close look there. Who's in front, or have you got options there?
Oh, it's not a race, that's for sure. I think they had a bit of time each at 10. They played together 10-15, and then they played together 10-12. So there's a few options I want to have a look at. We'll have a look at a few more next week against the Highlanders, and then we'll decide what we're going to run out with against the Force.
Izzy came back and did very well.
Yeah, I thought he had a nice run out. These guys have only been back since the 13th of January. So, they've had very little time under them. The way he himself, Ashley Cooper and Hooper, they had good impacts in that second 40, considering they've had a little preparation whatsoever. So that's a good sign. And I'd like to see them, next week with a little bit more time again to get them ready for round 1.
Benji Marshall, what were your thoughts on the way he went tonight? Obviously starved a bit of ball.
No, I think when he had the opportunities with the ball, he was looking to be dangerous. They weren't perhaps getting the ball on the front foot, which makes it harder for him to get at the line, which is what he's good at. So, because the 10's very dependent on the platform that he's laid, as are our 10s. I'm sure that guy, having spoken to him a bit after the match as well, he's gonna. It's going to take a few weeks to get into the swing of things and feel the movement of the game and how it works. But he's definitely going to be able to make an impact for the Blues. I've no doubt about that during the season.
We spoke a bit earlier about would he have been better off starting at 15 for the first couple of months, the first period of his rugby career?
Oh no, I think I come from I suppose the traditional way where the 15 and the 10 are sort of interchangeable. Back from my club rugby days, so I think either or is fine. And I think that because of the short time spans that these guys have got to get ready, especially in New Zealand, they've got even more restrictions on their players coming back, and they need to try everything they can straight away so they can get themselves ready for round 1.
Loafer made an impression tonight, didn't he?
Yeah, very much so. I think he exemplified a lot about what the team's trying to be about in the try scored. Not because it was a great try, but because he was on his back. Only a second or two before the try had to be scored, he got himself up, got the ball in his hand, and went out for the try. That's what we want to see our blokes getting up, getting back into the game.
And there he is, Michael Cheika, and the season's almost upon us. There he is, Les. Give us another wave. Goodbye, mate. There he is. Mark Cashman, thanks for coming across.
No worries, Bronk. Always a pleasure, mate.
All right, don't forget strike.com.au. Go there, get 10% off. Make sure you're hands-free Casho, hands-free Kissy, all the time, please, even over there in Dublin. We want to see that happen. All right, that is it for RuggaMatrix 185. We'll be back next week with another epic show. Until then, safe driving.